It's Cougar Sports Saturday.
That's caught! Touchdown! Stayed inside the boundary and he gets in for 6.
Cougar Sports Saturday, a presentation of KSL Sports.
Richie right to the rim, driving score! He would not be denied!
BYU Sports Talk by Cougar fans for Cougar fans. Sponsored by Any Hour Services, Electrical, Plumbing, Heating, and Air. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Kyle Ireland. On Utah's legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM and 1160 AM.
Cougar Sports Saturday, sponsored by Any Hour Services, Electric, Plumbing, Heating, and Air. Mitch Harper and Kyle Ireland with you. Big 12 football. It's off to a strong start this weekend. Couple Friday night games last night. And then just now, Cincinnati knocks off Kansas, upsets the Jayhawks in Lawrence, 37-34. The Bearcats only get their fourth win since they joined the Big 12 in 2023. Two of those wins, fifth win, excuse me. Two of those wins were against Houston, another against UCF. ASU, they knocked off the champs last year, and now they get a breakthrough win at Kansas. They're 1-0 in Big 12 play, so big win for the Bearcats. Other Big 12 action right now. Kansas State knocked off UCF 34-20. K-State gets finally a good win for them. And then Utah and West Virginia is underway on Fox. We'll keep tabs on that game. But right now, got to get to know the foe. Trent Finnegan from our Bonneville sibling station out in Denver, Denver Sports. I caught up with him earlier this week to discuss BYU and Colorado and how entertaining this matchup really should be tonight.
Yeah, I think it'll be good. CU's obviously going to be looking for some revenge from that 36-14 trouncing and Alamo Bowl last year, but this is a very different CU team, and I think you could argue it's a bit different of a BYU team as well. Obviously, the quarterback's a little different there, so playing at Folsom Field is going to play into CU's advantage as well. So they haven't had a big test like this. I know Georgia Tech was good early. CU hadn't really had stuff figured out yet. So now it seems like they finally have stuff figured out and they get a big ranked team coming into town. This is going to tell us a lot about the Buffs. And I think it's going to tell us a lot about BYU as well. I mean, they look good to start the season, but they haven't played a very difficult opponent as well, I would argue. So big test for both teams early on.
Last year, that Alamo Bowl, BYU handled Colorado. So do you think that's going to play as a huge motivation here for the guys that experienced that on Colorado's roster last year and are back for this one?
Oh, 100%. And I rewatched that game the other day, and you just see some of the tactics that Kalani Sitake used, like that onside kick early on in the first half to steal another possession. Parker Kingston, who's back this year for BYU, he was running all over Colorado on those punt returns. They got humiliated. Colorado got humiliated on national TV. There's no way around it. And there's a decent amount of guys still back from that team last year. I know, obviously, Shador, Travis, Shiloh, Cam Silman, Craig, Jimmy Horn, those guys aren't there. But there are some guys, especially on the lines, who were there. They witnessed that embarrassment firsthand, and they're going to be looking to get some revenge for sure.
Talking with Trent Finnegan, sports writer for denversports.com. You can check out his bylines on denversports.com. I got to say, Trent, it was pretty cool to see. This is kind of a fun topic. Ralphie 7, she looked legit, because I bring this up because when we talk about the Alamo Bowl, Ralphie 6 was, I'm not going to lie, that was my first experience seeing Ralphie. That was a bit disappointing in San Antonio.
It was terrible. I mean, she made it to the 20, I think, and she was just walking. And it was good. It was, a lot of people weren't happy that CU didn't have the live mascot ready to roll for the first two home games of the season. But at the same time, I understand it. Like, if a 700-pound bison isn't ready to go and she's let out in a stadium of 53,000 people, I don't think that would go over well. So that was a really cool experience on Saturday. I have been in that stadium for a lot of games, and I've never heard that stadium that loud in my life. Wow. And the football hadn't even started yet. It was just, she bolted out that gate, and I swear to you, it injected some kind of life into that stadium, that football team. And I think that she's going to be one of the best Ralphies. I mean, we only have 6 others to choose from, but Ralphie 5 was phenomenal during her tenure back in the 2010s. But I think that first run showed that Ralphie 7 might be the best of the bunch.
I'm excited. I cannot wait to see that this Saturday, Ralphie 7. And I'm curious, going back to the field, did quarterback Caden Salter inject life and belief that he is the QB going forward for the Buffs as QB1?
I definitely think that he put that debate to bed. Like 2 weeks ago, Dion said that he didn't know what a solidified quarterback was. And I think that the Buffs finally have a solidified quarterback in Salter. I think something else that helped them was Pat Shurmur called a much better game. He started attacking downfield more. He used Salter's legs more on design runs. But Salter showed his poise when he wasn't blitzed and there was no receivers open. He found running lanes to stretch the defense. And then when Wyoming did blitz, Salter was able to dice them up deep in the secondary. So he really showed that dual threat ability. Now, that's the Wyoming Cowboys. That's not the BYU Cougars. The BYU Cougars are a much better team, a much better defense, and have a much better coach in Sitake. So I do think that Salter kind of injected some much-needed life into this offense, and he showed that he's QB1. But the real test is this week against BYU to see if last week's performance was who he actually is, or if last week's performance was just, we're playing an inferior opponent and we have more talent. Let's throw the ball all over the field.
I'm curious, Trent, the rush offense, Caden Salter's the leading rusher on this team. There were some running backs that got a little bit dinged up, Simeon Price, DeKalen Taylor. What should we make of the running back situation heading into this matchup against BYU?
So after the game, Dion said that Price and Taylor were cool. I don't know. He seemed confident that they would play this week. They've both established them as kind of this running back room is shown it's such a good committee. Like there really isn't a top guy. Maybe Price is starting to break away as more of a number one option because he's shown that combination of power and speed, when Taylor just has the speed and Michael Welch, the sophomore, just has the power aspect. And then you have Dallin Hayden, who got off to a weird start. He suffered a hand injury in the offseason, so that caused him to miss some time. And he just got into the fold this past week. So they have 4 competent running backs, and then they have Salter, of course, who showed last week when you run option schemes and you run design power run schemes for him, he thrives. That's what he did in Liberty when he ran that spread option scheme down there for a handful of years. So this is not last year's Colorado team. When I think the Alamo Bowl final rushing yards was like 180 for BYU and 2 for Colorado. We're not going to see that this year. They've definitely shown that they're more committed to a balanced attack. I mean, they have 124 rushing attempts and 123 passing attempts as a team this season. That's about as 50-50 as you can get. So they have a good committee. If Taylor is healthy, they need to use him more in the passing game on third downs. He's just shown an immense ability to outrun anybody to the sideline and break a couple tackles. But this is a much better rushing attack than it was the first 2 seasons of the Prime era. The only issue so far this year is that they haven't committed to it in certain games. Georgia Tech, they ran the ball to start that game, and they scored a touchdown on the opening series, and then they just threw passes the next 2 and went 3 and out. The Houston game, they got behind early and stopped running the ball. So in the games where they've committed to having a balance between pass and run, it's been a very good outcome for the rush attacks. They need to do that and establish it early. It's not going to be easy against BYU. They have a really good defensive line in my eyes, but the Buffs have the ability to establish a run, and that will be their key to putting up points on offense on Saturday.
Who are the top wide receivers this year for Colorado?
I don't. It's funny like on paper it's Omarion Miller and Draylon Miller and Joseph Williams, but it's been this weird kind of committee, and they're rotating a bunch of guys in. I mean, we'll see here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 players all have 11 players have at least 4 receptions. They're rotating these receivers like crazy. Sincere Brown has really burst onto the scene, but he's only really getting targets on the deep balls. He had the big plays from Ryan Staub in that Delaware game, and then he hit 22.3 miles per hour on his 68-yard touchdown against Wyoming last week. So I would say Omarion Miller's the top guy. They can use him all over the field. Sincere Brown's their deep threat. Joseph Williams and Draylon Miller are kind of guys who they've thrown more intermediate passes to. They had a deep shot to Williams last week, which is another thing. They finally started throwing the ball deep instead of running bubble screens. And then if they're looking for the bubble screens, kind of Isaiah Harge and Quentin Gibson are two much smaller, much shiftier guys. So nobody's really established themselves as the top dog in this room just yet, because it's a very deep room and the coaches have emphasized that over and over. I think that the most talented player is Omarion Miller, and he and Sincere Brown over the top are the two players that BYU are going to have circled and filmed this week.
Trent, I'm not going to lie. When I see the defensive numbers for Colorado this season, I see the rush defense at 121st nationally, and I think BYU still got that Alamo Bowl offensive MVP back in LJ Martin. I would say he's been better this season. He's had 3 consecutive weeks with 100-plus rushing yards. Is there context to that rush defense, or has it been as bad as the numbers would suggest so far?
So the Wyoming game, they were pretty solid, and then they let up like a 70-yard burst or something on one play. So that skewed the Wyoming game a little bit. But Houston and Georgia Tech were as advertised. Georgia Tech, Haynes King ran for 150 yards and 3 touchdowns, and the Buffs seemed like they had no idea that Haynes King wanted to run the ball that game, which was kind of confusing to most people. And then in the Houston game, Connor Weigman, the Texas A&M transfer, he ran for over 70 yards, I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
So they've really struggled with the quarterback run. But something else which LJ Martin is going to feast on, and I agree with you that LJ Martin has been better this year, arguably, than he was last year. The tackling for CU has been a major issue, especially in the secondary. What's been happening is the D-line has been struggling with some injuries so far, so they haven't been getting great push inside. The linebackers have been a little undisciplined. You know, they're trying to replace their 2 stars in Nikai Hill-Green and Levonta Bentley from last year, so they're trying out Jeremiah Brown, Reggie Hughes, Martavius French. And those guys haven't been great at tackling. And there was a touchdown from Connor Weigman where he broke Reggie Hughes' ankles. And then the secondary hasn't been tackling, and the secondary hasn't been getting off of blocks against these better opponents. So I'm expecting LJ Martin to go for 150 on Saturday night. I love his game. He torched CU in the Alamo Bowl. He's torched the 3 teams that BYU have played so far. And if the Buffs can hold him to under 100 yards, that will bode very well for them in the outcome of the game. I just don't see a reality where they do that. Their run defense has not been that strong this season, and their tackling has not been that strong this season. And I think LJ Martin's going to expose that.
That's Trent Finnegan, sports writer for DenverSports.com, and Cougar fans are hoping his prediction comes to light tonight in Folsom Field. 150 yards for LJ Martin. You think that could happen?
Be a career high. Be a career high for LJ Martin after he's already popped off for 100 in every game this season, Mitch. If BYU fans listen to that and that comes to fruition, I mean, Cougar Nation is going to be ecstatic after the game tonight.
Let's talk more about LJ Martin and the importance of BYU star running back next here on Cougar Sports Saturday. We're live from Boulder right here on KSL News Radio.